Picture this. You've been sitting in a lobby for 2 long hours, watching everyone else get called in ahead of you. Then suddenly, the moment they figure out who you are, the whole atmosphere shifts. If Naomi Carter had known what that morning was about to become, she would have chosen comfort over style. Her sleek heels were made for quick entrances and confident exits, not for sitting endlessly with time grinding against her nerves. Yet here she was, standing under the towering glass of Cedar Heights Plaza, Atlanta, Georgia, portfolio pressed close to her side, every page inside rehearsed, every answer sharpened for what she believed could be the most important meeting of her career. She had trained herself for this: mock interviews, late-night research, endless note cards filled with scribbles of possible questions Richard Hale, the regional manager, might throw at her. She wasn't calm, but she was steady, laser-focused. Arriving 15 minutes early, just as she was raised to believe. Early means prepared. On time means too late. The lobby smelled faintly of polish and cologne, expensive in a way that reminded her she was an outsider trying to step in. A twisting steel sculpture gleamed by the elevators. At the desk, the receptionist barely looked up, gum tucked carefully between her teeth. "Hi, I'm Naomi Carter. 10 o'clock with Richard Hale." The woman tapped keys, murmured into the phone, and finally nodded. "He'll be right with you. Please take a seat." Naomi settled near the tall windows, crossing her legs, placing her portfolio squarely on her lap. 5 minutes slid into 10. 10 into 15. At first, she brushed it off. Important people run late. This was normal. She reviewed her notes again, whispering reminders. Stay calm. Stay sharp. You deserve this. But when 30 minutes stretched across her nerves, she rose and approached the desk again. "Excuse me," she asked gently. "Is Mr. Hale still available?" The receptionist's smile was thin, polite, and dismissive all at once. "He's finishing a call. He'll be right with you." Naomi returned to her seat, this time holding herself taller, though the air seemed heavier than before. Was this just the way things worked here? Or was she being tested? And that's the thing no one ever tells you about moments like this. Sometimes, the waiting isn't about time. It's about power. Because what happens next? That's the part no one saw coming. The receptionist shot up instantly, all smiles and offers of coffee, ushering the two men through the doors as if the world had been waiting for them. Naomi blinked, trying to steady herself. Maybe they had scheduled appointments. Maybe not. She didn't want to assume, but deep down, a quiet unease pressed against her chest. Not anger, not yet, just that stubborn, gnawing whisper that something wasn't right. She smoothed the edges of her blazer, her fingers tracing the seams like they could hold her together. Her phone read 10:58 a.m., almost an hour gone. Still, she kept telling herself, don't overreact, don't be that woman. By 11:15, the chair felt harder than stone, her back stiffening against it. She shifted slightly, hiding the discomfort behind calm posture. Shoulders relaxed, jaw steady. To anyone watching, if anyone was actually watching, she looked composed. Professional. Untouched by the weight. At least, that's what she needed to believe. From where she sat, Naomi had a perfect view of the desk. She watched as two more men walked in, button-downs crisp, laughter easy, confidence dripping off them like cologne. The receptionist greeted them warmly, offered drinks, chatted like old friends, and waved them through without hesitation. Naomi stared for a second too long before pulling her gaze away. Maybe they're regulars. Maybe they're important. The excuses ran through her mind, but none of them settled. The weight in her stomach grew heavier, like swallowing a stone. She held her portfolio tighter, each passing minute pulling the threads of her patience thinner. And that's when it hit her. It wasn't just being ignored. It was the way she was ignored. As if her presence didn't matter. As if her patience itself was a problem. Sometimes silence doesn't mean they don't see you. It means they don't want to. Across the lobby, movement caught her eye. A janitor stepped out, pushing a cart, his gray hair tucked under a faded cap. For a moment, their eyes met. His glance wasn't hurried, or dismissive, or sizing her up. It was simple, human. And that's the part no one expected, because this quiet exchange, it was about to change everything. Their eyes met briefly, just a quiet nod between two people who knew what it felt like to be invisible. Naomi returned the gesture with a small smile, then lowered her gaze. She didn't want to seem restless or worse, like she didn't belong. Every movement, every glance, every breath measured, controlled. Moments later, the lobby shifted. A tall woman in a tailored bright yellow pantsuit strode in with a kind of presence that filled the room without trying. Naomi recognized her instantly. Claudia Rivera, Vice President of Operations. She had seen Claudia on stage before, commanding panels, leading summits, the kind of woman who owned the space the second she entered it. The receptionist nearly sprang from her chair. "Good morning, Miss Rivera. Coffee? Water?" she offered eagerly. Claudia waved her off, gracious but brisk, heading straight for the elevators. Naomi's throat tightened. She straightened in her seat, adjusted her blazer, forcing herself to look busy, purposeful, like she was exactly where she needed to be. Sometimes it's not about who you are. It's about who they've already decided you're not. Kindly do us a quick favor. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you're touched by this story. Your support keeps us creating and sharing more powerful stories as this one. Thank you. Now, let's get back to our story. At 11:30, Naomi rose again. Steps careful, voice calm. "Hi. I was just wondering if I should reschedule. It's been quite a while." The receptionist blinked, startled, as if she had forgotten Naomi existed at all. "Oh. Mr. Hale is wrapping up a call. He'll be right with you." The same line, the same empty smile. Naomi swallowed hard. The taste of shame pressed up her throat, not hers, yet somehow forced on her. She nodded faintly, more to herself than to the woman behind the desk, and returned to her chair. Crossing her legs again, she felt a quiet burn building behind her eyes. She wouldn't cry. She wouldn't fidget. She wouldn't let them see her break. The clock ticked from the corner, louder now, steady and merciless. But here's the thing, time wasn't the only thing moving. Something inside Naomi was shifting too. And when it reached its limit, nothing would be the same again. Naomi stared at her phone, silently begging the numbers to move slower. 2 hours gone, and still, not a single real update. The lobby around her wasn't loud, but alive with its own rhythm. Printers buzzing, heels tapping across marble, muted conversations bouncing off glass walls. People moved with purpose. Everyone had somewhere to be. Everyone but her. She sat in the middle of it all, unseen, like a shadow taking up space no one wanted to acknowledge. She lifted her eyes. The receptionist was laughing with a delivery guy, handing over bags of lunch. Across the way, 2 men in tailored jackets clinked their coffee cups before strolling upstairs, their laughter unbothered and easy. Meanwhile, Naomi sat silent, her thoughts pressing louder than the hum of the building. Would they let someone else sit here this long? Would Richard keep a white man waiting for hours without an explanation? Or was she just imagining it being too sensitive? Her heels squeaked against the polished floor as she shifted to relieve the numbness in her legs. A small sound, yet heads turned. Quick, sharp glances landed on her, annoyed, dismissive, as if she was the one disturbing the order of things. Naomi pressed her lips together, forcing stillness back into her body. Sometimes, it's not the silence that hurts, it's the way people look at you when you finally make a sound. Her mother's voice rose in her memory, words from Birmingham that once felt distant. "You got to be twice as good, baby girl, just to get half as far." Back then, she thought it was just one of those sayings meant to toughen her up. But sitting here now, in a gleaming lobby filled with glass and steel, those words pressed down with a weight that felt impossible to carry. She opened her portfolio again, not to read. She knew the notes by heart, but to shield herself, to hide the anger, the shame, the exhaustion pushing closer to the surface. Then movement caught her eye. Richard Hale. He stepped out from behind the glass doors, tall and lean, his white shirt crisp, beard peppered with gray. Clipboard tucked casually under his arm. He chatted easily with another manager, laughing at something small. Naomi's heart lifted in her chest. She straightened, hoping this was it, the moment she would finally be acknowledged. But Richard's eyes swept the lobby and slid past her without pause, as if she were no more than a chair, a potted plant, a forgettable fixture. He turned, disappeared into another hallway, never breaking his conversation. Sometimes the worst sting isn't rejection. It's being erased in plain sight. Naomi leaned back in her chair, a hollow weight sinking deeper inside. Not just anger now, not even confusion. Something heavier, a tiredness without bottom. She thought about standing, about walking out, about saving what little dignity hadn't already been left behind on that marble floor. She stayed. Not because it was easy, but because walking out would feel like surrender. And Naomi Carter didn't surrender. Not after clawing her way here, not after working twice as hard for half the recognition. She sat straighter, holding her ground even as the receptionist flicked her a quick glance before burying herself back in her screen. That look wasn't kindness. It wasn't even neutral. It was the look of someone mildly inconvenienced by her very presence. Naomi's fingers tightened against her skirt until her knuckles burned white. For a moment, she thought the humiliation had peaked, that nothing else could make this day worse. But then the front doors opened, and the entire atmosphere shifted. Sometimes the people you least expect to walk in are the very ones who flip the whole room upside down. The sharp rhythm of polished shoes striking marble echoed through the lobby. Not one pair, several. 5 professionals swept inside with an authority that didn't need an introduction. Instantly, the air tightened. The receptionist stood taller, smoothing her blouse as nearby chatter thinned to silence. Naomi's heart gave a jolt. She knew 2 faces right away. Robert Langston, the company's CEO, and Patricia Cole, Senior Director of Finance. These weren't just decision-makers. They were power itself. Naomi hesitated, caught between sitting and standing. But before she could decide, Patricia spotted her and smiled. A genuine, unforced smile that cut through the lobby like light. Naomi Carter. Patricia's voice rang clear, carrying across glass and marble. I didn't know you were coming in today. Every head turned, even Richard Hale's. For a heartbeat, the entire lobby froze, eyes locked on her. Naomi rose smoothly, portfolio tucked beneath her arm like armor, heels clicking as she stepped forward with calm precision. Robert reached her first, extending his hand. It's good to see you again, Naomi, he said warmly. We were just talking about you last week, your Leadership Summit presentation. Exceptional work. She shook his hand firmly, her smile gracious but steady. Thank you, Mr. Langston. It's an honor. Power doesn't always announce itself with noise. Sometimes, it arrives quietly and leaves others scrambling to catch up. Behind them, Richard Hale's face drained of confidence. His mouth hung open just long enough to betray him before snapping shut. He rushed over, color flooding his cheeks, words tumbling too loud, too eager. Carter, I am so sorry for the wait. A situation came up, no excuse. I apologize personally. Naomi turned to him, her expression calm, controlled, almost unreadable. 2 hours is a long time for a situation, Mr. Hale, she said evenly, her voice carrying just enough for everyone to hear. Richard's jaw twitched. Robert's brow lifted, ever so slightly. Do you want me to carry this rewrite into the aftermath, when Richard scrambles to recover and Naomi quietly takes control of the moment? Patricia folded her arms loosely, her expression calm but curious, while Richard stumbled through excuses about calls, emergencies, anything that might soften the scene. But it was pointless. No one was listening to him anymore. The weight of the room had shifted, and all eyes were on Naomi. The way she carried herself with quiet poise, as if she had belonged here all along. Patricia stepped closer, touching Naomi's elbow lightly. If you have a moment, why don't you join us in the executive conference room? We'd love your input on a few projects. Naomi's smile was gracious, steady. I'd be honored. Richard tried to wedge himself back into relevance, blurting offers, coffee, carrying her things, anything to be useful. But Naomi pivoted just slightly, aligning herself with Patricia and Robert. In that simple move, she left Richard stranded in the background, his presence shrinking with every step they took toward the elevators. Sometimes the sharpest power play isn't loud. It's the quiet act of walking away while everyone else scrambles. Naomi didn't turn back, but she felt Richard's embarrassment trailing her like heat radiating off desert pavement. And for the first time that long morning, she allowed herself a small, private smile. But here's the thing, what Richard didn't know was that the fallout from this morning was only just beginning. Inside the executive conference room, the atmosphere was different, brighter, warmer. Conversations moved easily, laughter wasn't forced. Naomi was no longer a name lost on a waiting list. She was the reason the room leaned forward. Robert slid a folder across the polished table toward her. "We're in the early stages of a new leadership initiative," he said. "And after seeing your work at the summit, we want you involved." Naomi opened it carefully. Inside, outlines, timelines, early budget approvals. This wasn't another interview. This was an invitation. A seat at the table. Patricia leaned closer, her voice firm, deliberate. "We need more people like you, Naomi. People who see what others miss. Leaders who don't have to step on anyone to rise." Naomi took a slow breath, letting the weight of it sink in. She asked sharp, precise questions, offered clear solutions, and watched as the executives leaned in, not out of courtesy, but out of genuine interest. They weren't humoring her. They respected her. Through the glass wall, she caught sight of Richard Hale hovering near his office, restless, shifting papers he wasn't really reading. Every so often, he peeked toward the conference room, trying to understand how the woman he dismissed, the woman he left waiting like an afterthought, was now seated with the very people who shaped the company's future. Naomi met his eyes once. She didn't smile. She didn't scowl. Her gaze was steady, calm, and unshaken. Then she turned back to the conversation that actually mattered. Sometimes the real power move isn't confrontation. It's refusing to shrink when the spotlight finally finds you. An hour later, Robert rose, extending his hand once more. "Think about it," he said with warmth. "But personally, I'd love to see you step into this role." Naomi clasped his hand firmly. "I appreciate the opportunity. I'll give it serious thought." As she gathered her things, Patricia walked her out. At the doorway, Patricia lowered her voice, casual but deliberate. "If you ever have issues with how you're treated here, come straight to me. No middlemen." Naomi's lips curved into a real smile this time, soft but knowing. "Thank you, Patricia. I'll remember that." What Naomi didn't yet realize was that this wasn't just a victory. It was the start of a shift that would change far more than one morning. The doors closed behind her, leaving Richard stranded in the hallway, feigning work no one believed. And the truth was, the tide had already turned. A week later, the official offer letter arrived. The initiative wasn't just a side project, it was a direct path to a regional executive seat. Higher pay, real authority, a chance to shape something lasting. Naomi accepted, not for revenge, not to prove a point, but because she had earned every step. The very morning her promotion went public, Richard was summoned into a closed-door meeting. By lunch, whispers had spread through break rooms and elevators alike. No one had to say it out loud. They all knew. His arrogance had finally cost him. One ignored complaint too many, one oversight too far, one woman too strong to be silenced or left waiting in a lobby like she didn't exist. By Friday, Richard's office door was bare. No plaque, no trace, just an empty space where his name once hung. Naomi didn't gloat. She didn't even pause to think about it. She simply kept moving forward, steady, deliberate, the way she always had. Her first major meeting as a leader was standing room only. Department heads, managers, fresh recruits, all waiting to hear from her. Naomi stood at the head of the table, slate gray skirt and crisp white blouse enough to feel like armor. She clicked to the opening slide and spoke with calm authority. "Great ideas don't care who delivers them. And neither should we." The room fell quiet, every eye drawn to her. They weren't humoring her. They were leaning in, listening. True authority isn't about the title on your door. It's about the respect you command when you finally speak. For Naomi, this wasn't about Richard. It wasn't about revenge. It was about the silent vow she had whispered to herself in that marble lobby after being left unseen for hours. I will not let them define my worth. I will not shrink just to belong. I was made to lead. She carried that promise not just for herself, but for every young woman coming behind her, especially those who looked like her, so they wouldn't have to fight to be noticed or sit waiting twice as long just to be acknowledged. Because change doesn't end with one woman stepping forward. It begins there, and once it starts, it can ripple through everything. People may overlook your value until someone else validates it, but that doesn't erase the truth. You were valuable all along. Stand firm. Stay prepared. Your moment will come. And when it does, don't tiptoe into it. Walk in with your head high, unapologetic. If this story stirred something in you, don't let it end here. Share it. Like. Subscribe for more stories that remind us what resilience looks like when it finally takes its place at the table.